Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Everyone checking in on the USMJ space, feeling some shorter term time frame shifts in the air, but again, as always, for the last 3 and 4 months, bulls have to prove it on the daily time frame for us to be believers that this is the bottom. So where we stand, if you feel that our bottom of the fear cycle is going to be coming sooner rather than later, what you're trying to do is position yourself in entries that put a stop loss below the lows, or ideally you get to a point where you can put your stop losses at break even. And that way, if it is the bottom and we do see a shift of momentum into the fall, you have some really good entries. Or if it's not and we head down to lower lows, you have very little risk, whether it's break-even risk or a small loss. So that's a potential game plan as we fade towards the end of the summer. I guess it's technically, if you're going by the Earth and space cycle, we're only about halfway through the summer, but I feel that we are more than halfway through the fear cycle in the MJ space. So let's look at each individual name, see who's shaping up. As always, we highlight this is what has to happen for the bulls to prove themselves. And in the past couple months, the bulls just never really checked that off their list. So GWPH, short-term resistance is 167.99. Personally, no longer in GWPH after it started getting real choppy here back in early July. I lost interest. Doesn't mean it's not still looking up towards all-time highs, but the bulls have a lot of work to do as far as regaining trust, essentially. When you see a move like this and you see a daily trend change and then no follow through and you dump down and break support, you really hurt the bulls' trust and you have to gain it back again. So we're looking at 167.99 resistance. And of course, whenever it's that close to psychological level, I just call it 168. If we reject from 168 on Monday, the inverse head and shoulders is a possibility. And the weekly candlestick did have a nice long lower wick. But again, we have a clear weekly lower high. And this is probably the time frame for resistance that it's most clear to me. All-time high, our lower high is 188.76, and then we have another lower high, 180.75, and anything under 180.75 would be a weekly lower high here, keeping an eye on that to break if the bulls want to make their way back towards the all-time high. IIPR, major sell-off. Again, there was some dilution news, but it wasn't the dilution news that led to this sell-off, because that was here, and we bounced for multiple days. The market really priced it in for 5 days before we dropped to that lower low. So again, the speculation is that that was a bearish reaction to the hearing, the congressional hearing, getting ready to go towards the congressional vote for the SAFE Act and the States Act, which many people interpret would be bearish for the business for IIPR, essentially what they look to do. So interesting, again, that I said in a recent video that the bears would price it in here, but not really seeing it priced in for the bullish plays. Although, again, that shift may be taking place a little bit more towards the end of the week. So at this time, the daily bear flag is still in play here. Certainly a little inside bar. Bulls want to see a clear bull break into the mid-1 to try and negate the daily bear flag. But if this inside bar breaks bearish and we break 106.50 on Monday, the odds that we're heading down to the recent low of 98.50 to potentially confirm the daily bear flag would be high. Keeping in mind, bigger picture, we are absolutely looking for a weekly higher low to form. It's just a question of whether that has formed yet or not. And if it has not, I will definitely be interested after another leg down, looking in this range of support in the low $80 range that was built all April and May. If we head back down to those levels and the daily RSI starts getting close to oversold, I will definitely be interested. So Cureleaf bulls showing up in a big way at the end of the day. To wrap things up, we had their response to the FDA pretty much saying we're taking the products down that have the issues, we're changing the wording and all that. So we had the equilibrium on the hourly break bullish in the morning, and it was not a very convincing bull break, but just slow and steady follow through. So we had the high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, higher low, break of 990 first thing in the morning, and then we broke 1003 and 1012 a bit later and closed strong up at 1035. So from here, 1069 and 1070 is a little double top on the hourly, and then just like that, we're back at 1103. So it was absolutely a little bit of a blunder from the company, but it looks like some bigger money may have potentially used that little blunder as an opportunity to load again after the news of the buyout of the large private company. That bad news pretty much gave a second chance for bulls that wanted to get in after maybe missing that news. If we break 1103, it will be a very notable daily trend change, which has not happened on so many names, again, for months and months at this point. That would be notable. We would get a bull cross of the exponential moving averages. As we know, bull crosses in the past have had some really nice follow through. And from there, if we change that trend over 1103, we zoom out to the weekly chart, and we will just be looking for a weekly lower high compared to 1575, but it will be relief after months and months of weakness. And with Curaleaf having the perception of potentially being the lead USMJ name, that's going to potentially have implications on the sector as a whole. IAN, strong close. We had a double top the last 2 days, and actually it was a triple top essentially of 363. Broke that level, not a ton of follow through, so the bulls do want to see some continued upside action on Monday. 4-hour trend has changed, but the most important resistance level for me is 395. Again, in some of the recent videos, I continue to draw these falling wedge patterns, which are bullish reversal patterns that we need to be keeping an eye on. Curaleaf broke the bullish pattern with the help of news, but we look at a name like IAN, and looking how long we've been in this downward channel and how many rejections we had, we are now over that level. Again, trend lines for me, that doesn't mean anything for me, but it gets my attention a little bit, and now I say, okay, if we break 395, that will be notable and the first clear shift on the daily that we've seen in a very long time. From there, we would zoom out to the weekly chart, and we would say, all right, on the weekly chart, we have a lot of work to do to change the trend there, so wouldn't get too hopeful long term. But again, it's the kind of scenario where if we change the daily trend, that is enough justification, that is enough trend shift to justify entering long-term positions, hoping to hold them through the fall, being protective of them. Again, you know my strategy. If you've been watching videos at this point, I love entering a position, selling half of that position after a couple percent, putting my break-even stop loss below the lows, and knowing that if that is the bottom, I'm going to make good money on the second half, and if it's not, I have very low risk. So changing of daily trends is the potential signal for that to occur. We've had longer, prolonged pullbacks in hype markets in the past. Cryptocurrency and the MJ space in 2017 are notable examples. It took the weekly trends to change for us to get really confident, but it was once those weekly trends changed, the bulls did not look back, and that was the go signal. So again, we can change the daily trends and not change the weekly trends for a while, but those looking to be more aggressive and get better entries and have higher risk and higher reward are going to try and make their weekly entries on daily trend changes. More patient, cautious traders are going to be waiting for the weekly trend changes to indicate that we're heading back potentially towards some of these all-time highs on these names. Again, it all depends on which kind of trader you want to be or investor, but that is where we stand at this point. As we know, when there's blood in the streets, as there has been for months and months, that's when we want to pay attention. It's been a long time of paying attention at this point, pretty much waiting 2 months for some kind of more significant shift that hasn't happened yet, but that does not mean we're going to give up and fall asleep on the sector. So IAN 395, very key resistance. We have a couple higher lows each day. 343 and 342 is a double bottom. I would say breaking those levels without breaking 395 keeps the bears in full control as they have been. MedMen, so it was just a short-term bounce, and I went over a bit about how bulls have to keep continued pressure on bears and shorts in the cryptocurrency video I put out today. So even if you aren't trading cryptocurrency, if you're trying to absorb as much technical analysis as possible, I do suggest watching videos in other sectors because there's certainly little tidbits to pick up. And I have had a lot of people in the past watch sectors that they're not even trading and learn from it. So looking at the daily time frame here, we saw the 1 day, one bounce defending the all-time low. And if we fade back down and break 260, all-time lows are likely because that will just be another daily lower high and lower low. If the bulls are going to change things, we have to hold 260, turn around, break 294. That would change the daily trend, and that would give us a weekly equilibrium with a higher low forming. And once that daily trend changes, if it does, our weekly higher low will be set, and we'll look for a weekly lower high compared to 362. CWeb, nice little bounce as well. This is, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, that's a head and shoulders pattern. And it's something to be keeping an eye on, but what I'm keeping an eye on more is, again, can the bulls change the daily trend to give us a weekly higher low? The more upside, the better, to give space for a daily higher low to form. Short-term resistance is 2151. The bulls would have to hold 1785 and then break resistance wherever we do top out. Doesn't look like we've topped out yet as we close at the high of the day on Friday. But again, the weekly time frame needs this higher low to form. If we're going to see a weekly trend change, that's going to be key for confidence. The third scenario that about entering longer term positions is waiting for the weekly higher low. And so rather than entering on a daily trend change, or rather than waiting for that weekly trend change to take place and waiting all the way for a break and be feeling a little late at that point, I personally would never do that because that's too late for me. But if I am looking for a weekly trend change, maybe I miss the daily trend change and I wait for that, knowing that we're just going to set weekly lower highs like C-Web did, and then try and enter for the weekly higher low, having the stop loss of the bottom of consolidation as your guide. That's another way to play it out as well. OH. So OH on the daily time frame, still not much of a sign of a bounce. And I did enter a small position at the end of the day or middle of the day on Friday. And stop loss is just going to be the low. And this is a high risk, high reward trade, but a small position. And the reason I'm doing it is just seeing the shift and some bounce on the daily on other names and wondering if OH and CL are going to be a bit of a laggard. And again, OH is going to have a significant opportunity for investors if this deal is going to go through with OH and CL. So that's the big if, and that's why we pulled back so much, is because time. Again, opportunity cost of how long your funds are going to have to sit there before we get the conversion of shares. There's still a very favorable conversion rate, very favorable premium on OH right now. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but just the fact that if the deal were to suddenly get really likely or suddenly be approved or something along those lines, that would see OH as a really good entry. So that's a potential good news headline that's somewhere down the road. Again, not knowing when it's coming is the reason we pulled back so much, and the reason that premium is so high. That's not the reason I'm in the trade, but it certainly doesn't help to know that that could be a potential bullish catalyst down the road. But the bottom line is what the bulls have to do is break 690 to try and get any bounce underway. And then 783 is the most important resistance level from there. Significant pullback, looking for a monthly higher low compared to 503. Still a lot of space. We could pull back another 25% before we get to that support level. But again, 3 big months of pullback and watching for the shift, which there's not much sign of OH or CL shifting at this point. CL daily inside bar, if it breaks bullish, the most important short-term resistance for me is 1239. If it breaks bearish, we're looking at our low of 1046. Monthly time frame, this is just setting up for such a good equilibrium. You know it's so likely that an equilibrium is coming, but it's how much space we have. It's so hard to determine where the monthly higher low is going to form, which is why we have to use the shorter term time frames. So low, high, we're scouting this higher low, and I would expect, just visually speaking, if this were the bottom, I would absolutely look to head back to $14. That's a 35% gain from where we stand. If we were to pull back further, that level would be adjusted. And that's also the conservative target. If I were going to be a bit more bullish on my projection, I'd be looking up towards $16 if this was our bottom. Keeping in mind, we don't have any confidence this is our bottom yet. Have to change the daily trend. Changing the daily trend is the higher risk, higher reward entry for bulls looking for monthly higher lows. Again, more conservative, going to wait for that weekly trend change. But you show me this chart and you tell me or ask me what is most likely to happen, and I would say time to start scouting for this monthly higher low to form. Absolutely. There's hummingbirds going wild right out the window. Bird party. GTII, increasing bull volume. This is a very notable move. And GTII, again, not extremely well versed in the fundamentals, but I do believe there's been insider selling going on. Perhaps that is coming to a close. 1515 is a key resistance level. This is a notable shift, and the most notable shift here is the increasing bull volume. When's the last time we've seen any notable increasing bull volume on a candlestick that goes so significantly? 15% in 2 days. Again, when these names move and when sentiment shifts, 50% off the lows should be fairly easy. And when we get down to the penny stocks, those penny stocks could look for 75% plus off the lows. They're higher risk and higher reward. But that's why we're so interested in this space, because yes, it's been a long, slow bleed, but just as easy as it was for the bears to knock off 40 to 70% on these names, it's going to be that easy for the bulls to go 30 to 50% off those lows. So again, daily trend change is needed as always. 15.15. If I'm going to look out into the future as to a potential setup that the bulls would like to see, it would be a rejection of 15.15, a lower high on the daily, form your daily higher low, and then inverse head and shoulders, change that daily trend. From there, we would zoom out to the weekly time frame. Weekly time frame 15.15 is the key resistance. So again, the setup is there. We know what the bulls have to do to prove it to us. We haven't topped out yet. When we lose the hourly uptrend, our daily top will be set on this bounce, most likely. But we didn't even consolidate on the hourly on Friday. So when we lose the hourly uptrend, which is not at risk of being lost, at least on Monday, in my opinion, then we look for the daily higher low to form. So again, if you want to be a more aggressive bull, you're going to be scaling in and entering on the daily higher low with the low of consolidation as a stop level. HARV broke the daily lower highs. Next major resistance levels are 789 and 840. This is not a daily trend change. We have broken the lower highs, absolutely. And again, this is yet another name that you could draw a falling wedge on. So we broke the daily lower highs. Now we have to change the daily trend. Look at that beauty. Some beautiful charts. I'm not one to love, trend lines and patterns in that regard, but when they look like this and they've been fit for months and it's sector wide with multiple names, absolutely worth watching. Daily trend change will be needed wherever we do top out and lose the hourly uptrend. Higher low and higher high has to occur. I'm talking a lot. KSHB, daily inside bar. Low is 437, building a base of support around that level. Bulls have to break 465 for it to mean anything. So 437 to 465 is the current range. Looking at the weekly time frame, this is a red flag, just the fact that we changed the weekly trend and are giving a lot of it back. We still have a weekly uptrend with 420 is the most important level, but we look on the weekly time frame or the monthly time frame because again, a weekly trend change with a lack of follow through means zoom out, and it is potentially a monthly bear flag. Burden of proof is back on the bulls to try and negate this monthly bear flag. CVSI, daily inside bar, anything under 425 and 435 will keep the bears strong. Bulls are just trying to hold 390, and actually we couldn't do that, so we did drop to a lower low. Not really seeing any setup I like on CVSI. It's a bit unclear on the weekly time frame. Monthly chart. Most important support here is 333. I would expect a monthly higher low compared to that level, but there's less clarity on the daily and weekly time frame here as there is on some other names. NBEV, weak bounce attempt, potential daily bear flag. Bulls would have to break 413 to prove any kind of momentum on the daily. The weekly time frame has been pulling back significantly. I do like the monthly setup here. That's a very clear equilibrium. High of the bull move, low is 303, must hold support. Lower high of 779, and we're getting fairly close to 303, so that's a potential play off that support, and the declining volume is perfect for the equilibrium patterns. Let's see if there's an entry on NBEV approaching. I would love to see one more leg down. If we get one more leg down, there's a playoff $3 support. Weekly RSI at that point would be getting close to oversold. If we don't get another leg down and the bounce gets followed through to $4, we will still need the daily trend change. But again, that daily trend change could be the first indication that our monthly higher low has formed. PYX, very weak daily bounce, have to be cautious of a bear flag. We have this equilibrium that broke bear at 1406, and probably not easy to go short on PYX, but if you went bearish on a break of $14, we pulled back 10% from that level. And that, you don't have to nail the whole move to nail a 3 to 5% trade there on that clear break. So we broke 1301, didn't get a ton of follow through. The weekly time frame, you could potentially draw a falling wedge because again, the trademark of that pattern is lower lows with the lack of follow through because it shows us bears getting exhausted. And you could draw a falling wedge here. I like it better on the weekly as opposed to the daily, but it's very similar to a lot of other names. ZYNE, we're still watching this 4-hour time frame. That's a tight one. Resistance was 1160, didn't break it. So we now have a 4-hour equilibrium, 11, or make that 1088 to 1160. Most important range. If it breaks bullish, we look to 1248. If it breaks bearish, we look to 1062. That's a nice one to be watching into Monday. And if we reject from 1160 Monday, there is potential we stay within that equilibrium until Tuesday. CXXI. So again, a name like this, when the momentum shifts, it's going to be a more magnified percentage move, in my opinion. Higher risk, higher reward than some of the bigger names. Smaller dollar volumes move the price more significant percentages. If I were going to be drawing some downtrend resistance here, it would be looking like this, although with this kind of setup, I would probably use the wick just because you can get a nice, tighter setup hitting all three. If I'm using real bodies, we only hit 2 of these and we skip that third one. If I use the wicks, it's clearly hitting it. So heading back down towards the support, again, it is a falling wedge, but we could easily stay within this for another 2 weeks. Watch these falling wedges. These may be videos that we come back to in 3 months and say, yep, those were the signals of the bottom, and then we saw the shift into the fall. Again, I'll never say this is the bottom. I'm always going to say this is a lot more likely it's the bottom. It's a lot less likely it's a bottom, but I mean, this is what we need to be watching. TILT, bears still in control, dropping to a lower low. Again, what I want to see is, can the bears get any follow through, or are they showing exhaustion with the inability to get any clear pushes? Yet another falling wedge. We've been within this one. I mean, again, it's just how long we've been within these patterns. It's going to be 2 months at this point. 112 is the most important resistance. 73 key support broke. I certainly wouldn't want to be entering until we get some signals, because we are in black dirt breakdown and we can always go lower. We can always see another leg down and there's no support in sight. Keeping an eye on falling wedges. That's the theme of this video. We'll check back in forever, every day. Have a good weekend. Do good things. Couple nature and animal updates, and then we'll end it with a video of a bear from just a couple days ago. This was in the morning while I was doing my stock routine and then went to get some coffee. He was passing through the yard again, so I'm going to have to worry about him potentially messing with chickens or goats or the garden, but in general, he seems like he's just using the creek as a guide, really just a trail to go about his way, so it doesn't seem very interested in the property itself. So that may be an ongoing saga. So I went back to the other place that I was living, which was called the Tiny Temple, where I had all those tomatoes and cucumbers, and I've been taking the pots of the stuff that die, like the cucumbers are all done, so I took those pots and I'm putting that soil in our raised beds and putting the cucumbers and decomposing plant material in there as well. But the tomatoes are popping off. We're getting dozens and dozens of big, beautiful tomatoes. I've been making salsa with them. But I went back, and as I was moving the cucumbers, 2 big praying mantises were jumping off of it, and they were like, their bodies were like that big. And if you remember the videos where they were tiny, tiny, certainly all grown up, and nice to see that some of them survived. So I got a video of that somewhere, but it's on a cell phone and it's bad footage, so maybe I'll dig that up when I'm contentless. Other duck stuff. Went out the other day in the evening to stretch by the pond after wrapping up a work day, and I've seen the ducks stretch before as individuals, but they all were stretching in unison with me in terms of, you know, moving their wings and stretching their legs out, and I thought that was really funny. I've never seen them do that as a group before. So, what else? Ducks. Yesterday I fed them, and Mom usually stands on the back, and the ducks run up to the bird feeder to try and get some scraps, and I throw some food down for them there, some corn and all that good stuff. And she just watches, so I have to give her separate food. So I went and gave her separate food. She was on the other side of a raised bed, and it was the funniest thing that I've seen in a long time, where she would put her head down and take a bite of food, and then every second she would pop up and look, and her head was just, she would disappear, and then her little head would come over the raised bed. I'll have to try and film it because it's hysterical. What else we got? Bear, ducks. The hawk dove after the ducks recently. I made some food and was heading out to eat it on the porch, and I had my hands filled with plates and bowls and stuff, and the ducks were running from one pond to the other right as I walked outside, and the hawk swooped down at them. Didn't really try and make a full attempt to get one of them, but definitely an ongoing concern of Mama Duck is that hawk is around. So I ran it off, and a lot of people say, you should just let it eat the ducks and let nature be nature. Yeah, that's one way to look at it, but the way that I look at it is that hawk has not eaten a duck in many months, and it's been fine. And I've also watched it catch multiple frogs. so the huck can stay alive and sustain itself and keep doing its frog thing. It doesn't have to eat the ducks, and my goal is to keep those ducks safe, so I'm going to keep doing it. Other than that, I'll see you all soon.